goes back to mid-May of last year. They've generated over $60 billion. And the interesting part about this is that what Uber has done is that it's validated this concept or this idea of a consumer, the entrepreneur, and the worker as a part of a transaction. And so what happens is that now you have people, because I know I've taken Uber. How many people by show of hands have actually used Uber before? I know I can't see you, but I would assume that quite a few of you have. And what has happened is that now Uber has now transformed the taxi industry, meaning that when me and you get into an Uber, we're not concerned with who is delivering the service. We obviously want to be safe, but when I contact Uber, I'm not looking for, okay, I need to have Jody be my driver because I know Jody. It is a transaction-based transaction, and what happened is that I have a high level of comfort and trust in that particular process. And what it's done is that now it has opened up other corporations and even the individual worker in terms of how work gets done and other ways to be able to make money. Let's go to the next slide real quick. So as we look at this, what this has done is really now brought the gig economy really to the forefront. And so if I was to define what the gig economy is, the gig economy really is a network of people and a workforce that make a living without a formal work agreement with a corporation, with a startup, or an enterprise. Really what this means is that now you have freelancers, you have independent workers, and you have contract workers that are now finding alternative ways to be able to generate revenue and alternative ways to be able to work, meaning that where you work is not just I have to go into an office and sit in the desk and my boss takes attendance anymore. That means that the opportunity to be able to do work can happen from any place. I'm doing this webinar from my home office. I have a physical office in Midtown Detroit, but sometimes I can do the work that I'm doing literally sitting in my desk. I take a shower, come downstairs, and I get behind a computer screen, and I can do a lot of the transactions that I need without having to go to a physical office. So what does this mean? So when we start looking at the gig economy, we're still looking at, at really what this is all about. And so if we look at the gig economy, there are transaction-based platforms, which are your Ubers, Lyft, TaskRabbit, Thumbtack. There are also corporations and there are also enterprises who are also leveraging this particular talent pool. When you look at the gig economy, what happens is that it allows a corporation to be able to pull from a broader talent pool, meaning that I don't necessarily have to have people that work in the same general region or city that the company is in. I can pull a talent from another part of the world. And so in this economy, you really have to think about how do you position your skill set so that you can leverage it. When we look at a situation like Uber, there are a lot of limitations, right? So there are price limitations. You don't have a lot of variation in terms of how much you can charge. The price is already set. But if you start to look at the gig economy in terms of myself or you, what is the skill set that you're bringing to the marketplace? And then looking at the marketplace as an opportunity for you to be able to generate revenue, right? And so now, why is this so appealing to people? For a worker such as myself, it gives me more freedom, gives me more flexibility, gives me more autonomy, and gives me a greater sense of purpose in terms of the work that I actually do. And so if we were to look at the size of the economy, and these numbers are a little dated, they go back to 2015, but you can see 50+ million people have entered the gig economy in the workplace. That's a huge aggregate number. So if we look at the number today, 1 out of 3 workers are freelancers. That's 68 million workers today. That's quite a few people. Again, by the year 2020, 40% of the workers are going to be freelancers. So that creates a great opportunity for individuals to think about how would you position who you are in the marketplace? What does this mean? This means that there has to be something that separates you from everyone else, and you have to figure out, what do I need to do so I can create a digital presence and really be able to draw people in so that they want to work with me, or so that other corporations want to bring me in. The reason that an employer is looking at this is that it gives them an opportunity to access unique skills and unique talents that people might have in certain regions of the world, right? And so again, getting you to think about this. So I'm going to give you an example out of my own personal life. So I had a client, and I was able to do a project with the client. This project netted me about $30,000 on doing 2 months worth of work. Obviously, the work had to be high quality, which if the brand man is doing it, you know the work is high quality, right? Doing high quality work, but I was able to do the work remotely. I never went into their office. I already had a business relationship with this particular entity, but I was able to do all the work remotely. I was able to upload stuff to Dropbox. I was able to use the cloud. We could email. I could share content. There were things that took place, and this would never happen 20 years ago. And so when you begin to think about how you create a living and what are some of the things that you can do, this new economy, really, today's session is really about getting you to think about how you can position yourself so that more opportunities can come your way. And so when we look at the gig economy, again, there are transaction-based networks such as Uber. There are corporations that are actually bringing in freelancers or contract workers, or actually doing work with individuals who are not direct employees of the company. And then there's an opportunity for you as an entrepreneur to be able to take your skills to the marketplace, and that gives you probably the most flexibility in terms of being able to market your services at a higher economic level. Let's go to the next slide. So as we talk about this this new thing that's happening in the workplace, one of the interesting things that I saw is that 52.3% of people are unhappy at work. And I know when you start talking about people in my generation, I'm 45 years old. And so many of us by this point in time in our life, we might have families, there's certain financial obligations. If you have children, having them in school, and those kind of things, we're literally more focused on trying to make sure that we can meet those financial obligations. The millennials and the younger generation isn't thinking that way. And so what happens is that you have a lot of people who go to work every single day and they do something that they really don't like. And part of the reason is that the sense of purpose of why they're doing what they're doing hasn't existed. And the educational system that we have in place, the educational system originally was designed to create employees, meaning that the elite, the Carnegies and the Rockefellers, the ones who really set up the educational system that we know actually today, was designed for people to be able to follow instruction but not be motivated enough to run their own business or run their own enterprise. And so typically what you'll find is that work is designed in a way to where you're just putting a cog into a hole. And again, I'm not demeaning people that actually work in a corporate environment. Some people are wired that way, and they should work there. But the great part about what we're talking about is that you have an opportunity to be able to, depending on the work situation, work from anywhere. You're able to work on things that you really love to do. And I truly believe that if you work on things that you really love to do, what ultimately happens is that you're able to create great results. You're able to create things that can transform companies, transform cities. It can transform your life. It allows you to be able to be a person that's really happy with what they do, and I think that customers understand that. It resonates with them, and what it ultimately does is that it allows them to be able to work with people that they really would like to build a relationship with. The other thing is about the gig economy is that that this really allows enterprises and startups to be able to attract and acquire quality talent, meaning that I can identify someone who has a skill set that works for me. So what this also means is that if you're looking to do work that you really love to do, you're probably going to have to look at some other channels in terms of how this work, how you're able to acquire the work, or how you're able to create the type of work arrangement that you want. And again, there are different platforms that you can use, and you can use tools like LinkedIn to find out if people have projects, or if there are certain types of contract opportunities, or if there are platforms where you can find more work. And we'll talk about some of these platforms, right? Let's go to the next slide. But again, what we're talking about really is about getting people to be more fulfilled at what they do, loving what they do, working on projects that they really want to work on. As an entrepreneur, we all want to get to the point to where we're working on things that we love, and we want to be able to fire clients that are a problem for us, or or pull too much of our energy. And so we want to get to a point to where we're really working on things that we love to do. The next piece is that 30% of people are not engaged at work. And what that means is that there's about $450 to $550 billion worth of lost productivity because people just aren't engaged, because people don't like what they do. And at the end of the day, work is still work. And so there's going to be times that you're not going to feel like going to work, or not feel like doing something. Even if you're a basketball player, there are certain nights that you would like to have a night off, right? So I'm not saying that, but what I am saying is that when you're doing something that you love to do, you're able to get greater results. And when we talk about lost productivity, we're talking about absenteeism, but let's also talk about this term presenteeism, meaning that you're present, but you're not there. And there are a lot of people who are in that boat because they're not really connected to the work that they do. And so when we start talking about doing the things that you love to do, it puts you in a place to where now you are present and you're providing quality services. So let's go to the next slide. So when we start talking about what does this gig economy ecosystem look like, I wanted to talk about a few things just to kind of give you some context of what this means. And if you look at different business verticals and different industries, we could have a longer, more exhaustive list, but this will give you a pretty good idea, right? So if someone is an entrepreneur, there is an opportunity to be a coach, meaning that, so in the space that I'm in, being an executive coach, working with C-suite personnel, and you can have a contractual agreement with them. It could be an entrepreneur doing one-on-one. These coaching sessions could happen in your office. It could happen in a coffee shop. But coaching is one line item in terms of ways to be able to generate revenue. Next is consulting. Consulting can take on many forms, but typically a consulting relationship has a beginning and it has an end date. It doesn't last forever. You typically don't take on, this is a 3 to 5 year assignment. It could be a 3-month coaching. It could be a 3-month consulting piece. It could be 6 months. So it could be some variation. And then the details of what that consulting project looks like, you could be consulting with a solopreneur. You could be consulting with a for-profit company, a nonprofit. It could be a social impact kind of thing that you do. So there are a lot of different organizations that you can consult with, and then you would define your scope of work and define what that particular relationship would look like, and then there's some kind of payment strategy that's set up with that. If you are an infopreneur, being an infopreneur means that part of what you would do is speaking. Speaking is part of it. So I travel and I speak. Like I'm speaking today. I'm speaking at Black Tech Week next week. So I'm excited about that. And what's happening is that that's another line item as a part of what I do, right? Short-term employment. And so I wanted people to understand that in the gig economy, it doesn't mean that you can't have W-2 opportunities. So the things that I have listed so far are what we call 1099. where you are a contract worker, you're doing some kind of contract services, and you're responsible for your own taxes. Projects would fall underneath that as well. So there could be projects that you have with various organizations. But as a part of this, you could also have short-term employment. And we're going to go to the next one in a second. But with the short-term employment, it could mean that you could have some type of project with a corporation for a short period of time. And so I want you to really think about the gig economy in terms of what this looks like overall. Let's go to the last slide, and it'll kind of lay out a picture, because I wanted to give you a visual of what the gig economy really looks like. If we go to our next slide, what we'll see is that it is a collection of projects that we're working on. Some of these projects overlap, and I want you to be able to see the graphical skills. So I had to put on my design thinking hat. I pulled out my Sharpie marker, and I just wanted to kind of lay it out to you, just to give you a visual of what the gig economy looks like. The gig economy really boils down to earning or earned income. So if you look at the bar at the bottom, what you'll notice is that this is a bar showing you, so this actual snapshot looks like an entire year. So I didn't put months on there, but it looks like an entire year. So from January through December, you would earn X amount of dollars worth of income. And then this becomes a series of projects and other things that you're doing throughout the year. So say, for instance, you start out in January and you have a short-term W-2, and you have a W-2 job or opportunity, and so that might last 2.5 months, and so you're earning income that way. At the same time, before that job ends, you might have X number of speaking gigs. So you put those speaking gigs down, and those could be unpaid, and it could be paid speaking gigs, right? And so that's part of it. You could have a project with the startup. So say, for instance, if they need you to manage their social media, and so that project might be a 3-month project. So you put that down as a 3-month project. They're going to pay you a retainer, X amount up front. What I would kind of recommend is that you get 50% up front partway through the process. You would get probably another 25% and then get the other 25% at the end. You have to know your client, but you want to make sure that you're getting paid. The other part is that you want to think about the terms. I've worked with organizations that are 90 days, that are net 90. And so I had to go negotiate and make sure that I could get mine without waiting 90 days, because again, for a smaller company, that just doesn't work, right? So part of the terms is going to be critically important. You can set up other consulting projects, and I just put gigs down because that could be something else. So this shows you a series of projects, and what I would say in the gig economy is that as an entrepreneur, you have to really manage this, because getting gigs that people pay for, it takes time. And so what ultimately happens is that you can start negotiating with a client, you can turn in proposals, and what happens is that it takes time for things to get approved. People get cold feet once they start seeing numbers, and so making this kind of workflow work for you takes time, and it takes consistency. It takes follow-up. You following back up, submitting proposals, turning those in, identifying projects, trying to identify the terms that work for you. The other part to think about is that you have to think about the work conditions. How are you going to be able to do the work? Where does the work get done? How does it get done? What does this look like? And also making sure that you don't overcommit yourself. And in the gig economy, it doesn't mean that you have to have all of the work done by you. So there are times that I have a project and I'll bring other contract workers on. They're still under Brandcamp University, it's still our project, but if I need to have a web developer, right, I could do some of that stuff, but I have people that I work with. I have videographers and photographers that I work with. So I can bring those in, and then even though I'm paying part of that out, I can focus on what I need to focus on. So I know we've gone about 20 minutes, so I want to open up the floor now for questions, even though I'm sure I've already solved world peace and hunger. But but if there's some questions, I would love to be able to answer the questions that you have, right? Because at the end of the day, I don't care how great of a speaker you are, people would love to hear their own questions and love to hear themselves speak. So again, are there any questions that we have?
There are lots of great questions. One, you keep referring, not everyone here has made it up the ladder or into corporate America, so some folks just wanted to know when you're referring to the C-suite, what you're referring to. And I think that that's a basic question just because, in the gig economy, you get sources from all different places.
Yes. Okay. So that's a great question. So, when you start talking about C-suite, it could, there are a couple different answers. So if you're talking about it at the corporation, you could be talking about senior level management. You could be talking about a CEO, all depending on the size of the company, where you could have an opportunity to be able to do executive coaching with someone who runs the company. It could be a senior VP of marketing. So it could be someone who's at the senior VP level. It could be someone who's actually running the company. If you're talking about smaller companies, where it could be a founder, and so that organization might be 5 people, and you might be working with the founder / CEO / marketing, does everything, but that person is the founder. So it could be a founder of a small company. It could be a senior level vice president. It could be someone who's over a certain vertical inside of a business. So those are kind of the areas that I would say in terms of when you start talking about C-suite.
Gotcha. The other big question, and it's come up a lot, is, you talked about the other ways and resources to find jobs like Uber. What about, besides TaskRabbit and Thumbtack, are there some other places to find gigs online, like a LinkedIn, but for, and I for sure I can say I've gotten a lot of positions from freelancers.org because I'm a member there. But are there some other ones that you know of?
Yes. So I'll say Elance is one of them. So if you are a designer, you can go in there and you're able to, to get opportunity. I think like 99 Designs. So there's some different ones where you can where they actually connect a customer and an actual person who has some type of skill. What I like to do also is that I like to look at how do I create my own marketplace. So there is definitely risk there as well. But I use a lot of what I do in a social, just from a social standpoint in terms of things that I share for me to be able to connect with business owners. So if I'm doing a webinar like this, then maybe someone who's on the webinar or someone who sees the post. So I just talked to someone yesterday, and and my conversation with them is that they asked me to come speak at a conference in Chicago, which is going to be a really nice conference. I asked them how they found out about what I'm doing, and they said, well, it goes back to I just been following you online, and over time I've seen various things that you're working on, and so that prompted me to reach out to you about coming and speaking at our conference. I've also picked up other projects that way. So there is also just the marketplace that you have to create, and a lot of that comes just from your social interactions. So there are some direct channels such as Elance, such as what Jody has already mentioned in terms of ways to be able to create that. The other thing is that creating content can also create other opportunities. So if you create a class in Skillshare and you're able to deliver that class, even if you only have 20 people to sign up for the class, the fact that you can use that to promote that is another opportunity for you to be able to, now people know that you deliver these services. The other thing is that people have to know that they can come to you for the services, right? So for most of us, we don't have enough information on our website, and people don't even know that we do it. And so it's difficult for someone to pay you for something that they don't even know that you do. And so I think some of it is going back to branding yourself anyway, at least having a site that shows I deliver these services. So I do consulting, I do speaking, I do X, Y, Z, so that you can drive people to that, or when people go to search or look for you, they can actually find it. And so in many cases, we just haven't done a good enough job of promoting the fact that these skills, that we're for hire, or that we can deliver these particular services. So I want people to think about that as well too, because people like to go to known commodities. A lot of the platforms that Jody mentioned are important because what it does is that there is a reputation that's connected to those platforms. There is a level of trust. There's a rating system typically, so people at least have an idea of, okay, the quality of service. And it also puts money in escrow so that while the transaction is being worked out, there is a safeguard on both sides. So again, the part that I'm talking about in terms of going to the marketplace is more risky, but going to the marketplace gives you more autonomy and allows you to position and charge differently than services that are transaction-based through various social media platforms.
Gotcha. So the other big question is, we have a nice pendulum of folks on our line, those like you and I who are a little bit more seasoned of navigating through the gig economy, and those who are just at the beginning, like, you know, the budding entrepreneur, maybe a side hustle. So the big question is, you know, how do you really jump in? Like, how do you get your foot in? It's kind of like double dutch. You know, you get smacked a couple of times, but, you know, how can you get upstream and kind of quickly, and or, you know, at a pace where it makes sense for you? Like, you know, where should they go? You know, are there specific industry groups? It's not like there's the gig economy one group to go to. You know, I think it's more industry based, and what you were saying in your last answer response was about really branding yourself in an area and becoming an expert, whether or not it's blogging, whether or not it's other things. So what's the best pathway for someone who's new to try to get into becoming a freelancer or an independent contractor, and someone who's already in, how do they continue to navigate and find new places? Because, you know, like dating, it gets old.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So some of it, I think, is just being able to experiment. And so say, for instance, if you're a graphic designer and you want something that already has a structure to it, then using something like Elance can be an opportunity for you to be able to go into a structured environment. But what also happens inside these structured environments is that you still have to stand out. So even when I've looked for graphic designers in those spaces, what I've also done is that I go out and I just do organic search on the individual anyway, because I want to see what they really do, and I want to see how they conduct themselves online. You know, if you're a graphic designer, then I think that I should be able to see a website, or I should see something in Behance. I should be able to see content that you've actually created. So for me, I think it's really important that you have some kind of social proof that people can look at, they can go to, so that it validates who you are. You can look at a channel, and there are different channels, and I'm not a super expert in terms of all the different verticals and all the different organizations that exist in them, but there are typically some type of organization that would be maybe connected to a specific niche organization. But again, if you're looking at more general, if you're doing like photography or things like that, like a Thumbtack can be a really cool platform to look at. Graphic design, obviously Elance is, I definitely like one of those. And I would also go to tried and true platforms that have a huge ecosystem of people who are in the business space. So I think LinkedIn can be extremely valuable in terms of identifying organizations that are looking for talent, that are working on projects or things like that, or even identifying somebody who is in that space. So I think LinkedIn, to me, is a very valuable tool. I also like to use tools like Twitter and and varying my actual search topics to be able to identify things that people are talking about. And so I would look at some of those tools in terms of being able to identify things. But the thing is that you want to be able to try something. There might be local clients that you can work with. So just doing something, in the marketplace, in the general marketplace, could work out very, very well. The other thing is that there are a lot of virtual opportunities. Whether you are a virtual assistant, like I have an assistant who is in the same physical city and area that I'm in, but a lot of the work that she does is virtual. So we communicate online. She does a lot of stuff virtually, and then there are certain things that we so need to be face-to-face on. So I think there's a lot of virtual opportunities. So I would use LinkedIn. I would look for platforms inside of my particular industry, but I would also look at a lot of social tools such as Twitter or things like that to be able to identify business opportunities to be able to test out my skill set and also connecting that to an actual client.
Ooh, yes. And then the other thing I want to mention about LinkedIn too is they're now starting to introduce a platform for business owners and entrepreneurs to kind of promote their actual business to get business. So, but they tend to do it you get invited. So you have to have been branded, as Haj has said over and over, that they need to know what you are going to work for and work towards. I definitely think that Thumbtack is a great way to go in just about any industry, especially if you're starting out and you're not really sure about pricing and contracts, because you lay out what you're going to sell your service for, what they're going to get, and it's kind of controlled versus it going out to a huge universe. So whether or not you're a plumber, whether or not you're a graphic designer, and I even have some of my fitness stuff on there, you can figure out a better pathway for yourself if you're new. If you're more seasoned, then this LinkedIn platform and some other, the Elance and the very industry specific when you're known, will work better for you. Which leads to the next question, which is really a lot of folks that are kind of in it or even want to start out are curious about pricing. Are there coaches for pricing? How do you figure out pricing? For those of you that are employees, when you go from job to job, you kind of know what you're worth or what you want to get paid. You need to know the same as working for yourself. So Haj, are there some great tips of advice or some people or organizations or websites that folks can get some basic pricing on what they can ask for?
Yeah, there's books and there's various things that you can look at online that kind of give you, even like for graphics, there's the Guild, and and it'll show you standards if you're working for a nonprofit, a for-profit, nonprofit type of client. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, like some of this stuff, you have to do your research. You have to figure out, even though the marketplace might say, okay, a consultant should get $100 to $150 an hour. Okay, are you delivering enough value that you feel comfortable marketing that? Can you do you even have the resume or the pieces to be able to justify that so someone could look at it and say, you know what, I feel comfortable doing that? And the other thing is that price is really, really subjective. And and so there's times where, every entrepreneur, we've all priced stuff wrong. If you haven't priced anything wrong as an entrepreneur, that means that you haven't priced anything. So I priced stuff incorrectly before, and then you get in it and you're trying to, be a blessing to somebody, and they end up working you to the bone, and you realize, okay, all right, so I can't really be really nice to this person because they don't understand that I'm giving them a discount. And so I think some of it just comes from doing it over and over again in terms of identifying. And again, you can research other people who have comparable skills and and comparable terms. I've also talked to other people who are in the same space just to get an idea in terms of what they actually charge. And so from a speaker standpoint, I have friends that charge anywhere from nothing to $14,000 to $30,000 to go speak. Now, if the average person goes and said, okay, I'm worth $30,000, and they go submit that, 9 times out of 10, they're not going to get a whole lot of speaking gigs, right? So again, just because somebody gets a certain price doesn't mean that somebody else can get it. So again, there's a lot of subjectivity. Some of it is trial and error. And I think as you start to do it, you'll start to zero in on, and then you have to figure out what is your time worth and what value. Not I believe that I should get this because I went to school and I have all these degrees, but really, what is your time worth, and how much time does it take to do specific tasks? There's also having software. I use something called Harvest App. So you go to harvestapp.com, and so when I do invoices, it allows me to be able to, as I'm putting in time on certain tasks, I can identify how much time is being spent, right? Because that's important for me to understand, okay, if I want to make X amount of dollars per hour, if this project is going to be a 30-hour project, is it 30 hours? Is it just because 30 hours went by that week, or is it 30 hours worth of work? How do I track that? And being able to manage your time gives you a better feel for, okay, am I properly allocating the time? What does this time look like cost-wise? Do I need to be working on this specific task, or should I outsource that and then I focus on the main thing? So I think some of it is just understanding how you work, understanding what you would like to make per hour, and then how long a task should take, and if that should be internal or those should be, or some of the costs should be external.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, it's definitely a trial by error. The other thing, back to just to give, I'm not an ambassador of Thumbtack, but once you're on there for a while, they do give you some feedback of other your competition. So folks that if you are a photographer, they'll say that you've gotten more gigs than someone else, but they might ask for more, you might ask for less, you might ask more. So the stuff that Haj is bringing up, you do get in a report, kind of like if you get a Hootsuite report or your LinkedIn or anything else, that it is tracked by Thumbtack of how you're doing. You know, how many opportunities are you getting, how many are you taking, so to pay attention. But the pricing thing is definitely trial by error and time served, which leads to the next question, which is, in this kind of space, you know, do you need someone legal to help you with your contracts? How do you develop your contracts? You know, who does it? Is it you? Is it the client? You know, any suggestions and, you know, advice in that space?
Yes. So, so anytime a client does a contract, it's always going to be leaned towards protecting them. So if you just take a contract that's, you know, that's drawn up by the client, what's going to happen is that it's always going to be focused on them. So I'll give you an example. So when I was working with, and I've been on both sides of that, right? So I have, you know, so when I was working with the client, it was a $30,000 project. Then I made sure I had my lawyer look at it. And so for me, I have two lawyers. I have my high-priced lawyer that costs a lot of money, and when I need to make sure that that I have the right eyes looking at it. So say, for instance, if it's a trademark issue, and sometimes who the letter is coming from, or the or the legal firm is important, and so they handle all the big stuff. And so if I have small contract stuff that just, you know, I need to make sure that it's clear that I own the rights to the content that's created, or all the other stuff, or make sure that we're not getting into a work for hire issue. So you can have things that are work for hire, meaning that if you sign this contract and we have work for hire, that means that anything that you've created, whether we used it or not, is our property. And so for me, I'm not going to sign that unless I'm going to make, you know, an ungodly amount of money, and that, you know, and the thing makes total sense. Work for hire stuff in there, I'm going to make sure that that's eliminated. But that happens because I've worked with lawyers. I know what I'm looking for. So for me, if it's a bigger project, you definitely want to. Contracts, there are enough contracts online. You can do searches and have the basic language in there. What I wouldn't do is I wouldn't go, if the project is, you know, a $3,000 project, and you go spend, you know, $2,900 on legal fees trying to get this huge law firm to be able to do it, then you don't make any money on the project. So again, legal is important. The other part about the gig economy is that there are a lot of things. There are some cons to it. You don't have the same benefits that you have if you work inside of a you know, an existing company and you are a direct employee. Taxes, you're responsible for your taxes, meaning that they're not pulling taxes out, and if you don't manage those resources properly, then you could run into tax issues on the other end. There's not a lot of protection for 1099 workers. There are a lot of things. I think there's something called like the freelance union, or you know what I'm saying, or things like that in terms of helping freelancers or 1099ers get have better benefits, or getting better cost on benefits. So even though the gig economy is booming, there's a lot of great things that are happening with it. There is a definite downside to it, and you have to understand that. You also have to understand that gigs don't just come your way just because you're a nice person, right? And so you have to balance that in terms of, am I doing this just as a side hustle? Like some people might use Uber or might use something just because they want some supplemental income. Now, if you're looking for this to be your main thing, then your mindset, your approach, the systems and the tools that you have in place are going to be different, because you need to make sure that there's going to be that continuum of revenue coming in. And so again, you need to kind of think about that.
For sure. So there's a balance that everyone needs to kind of find when they're doing this. So, you know, is there, like, you know, you had a real job first, right? Not just a gig when you started out, Haj. So how did you make the transition, or how do you see, maybe yours wasn't as successful as some others? I know that I've been able to go in and out of the gig economy and then take a job back, you know, become a VP at Merrill, then go back and write books, and you know, so how fluid is it? When seems to be the best time? Like, there's no best time, but what seems to be, if someone's really trying to break free and go on to their own, what maybe are the top 5 things they should have in place, you know, or just to make it smoother and not a rough ride, you know.
Yeah, I think, you know, you have to understand your risk tolerance. And so some people are at a different place in their life. So if you're married and you have children and you have a lot more responsibilities, you know, your risk tolerance might be a lot lower, meaning that, okay, I can't go out here and just take a chance. If you're a young millennial who just graduated from college and you don't mind having a roommate, and you know, and you will eat, you'll continue to eat ramen noodles or whatever, you know, and you're willing to sacrifice a lot of personal things, then you can take more risks. But what I would say is that you first want to be able to at least try to identify the space that you want to be in, and at least position yourself so that people know that you're open for business, and if there's some kind of social proof. I think you need that first. And then from there, if you're able to do it on the side and you're able to do side projects while you still maintain a regular job, I think that's a great way to start, because it allows you to be able to mitigate risk. It allows you to be able to figure out your price structure, figure out what you want to do, the type of work arrangements that work for you. And then I think it's easier to transition into that. So for me, I worked at Ford Motor Company, and my job ended on my birthday in 2009, right after I had just got finished speaking at Walt Disney, and my wife was pregnant with our daughter. And so I had an opportunity to be able to get another job immediately. But I decided, or we decided that, you know, that I was going to go this route. And it's worked out for me. But what I'll also say is that there are ebbs and flows in this. And so if you think about the graphic that I showed, that showed earned revenue, and it showed job, and it showed contract work and different things like that. You have to figure out what your risk tolerance is, and then what does earned revenue really look like. And so in the gig economy, earned revenue is a series or a collection of work assignments, whether it's W-2 or 1099. But I would say having some money saved will be important. Figuring out what your risk tolerance is, and then positioning yourself so that people know that, okay, these are the services that you offer, or these are the skills that you're marketing, and then have things together so that you can market it to a particular demographic, whether it's a corporation or an organization that's looking to bring in non-direct employees, or if it's providing, or if it's doing a project as a part of an entrepreneurial company that you own. So I would think those would be some of the things that I would start out with, and then I would try to crawl before I walk.
Definitely. So for the other questions come out from, if you're now kind of in the gig economy a little or thinking about positioning your own business, what are some ways that you've outsourced, and those services, did you pay for? Do you have your client pay for? How do you decide? Is that an added expense, so you've taken on a contract and you didn't realize, one of the ones that, works you like a dog, you didn't realize you're going to have to do 10 extra things. Maybe you can't do it by yourself. People want to figure out what do you do when you also might need to outsource, and, how do you do that and also kind of still make your contract work?
Gotcha. So all depending on what it is. So I had one client where we had to do a series of videos, and so they came to us. We were in charge of creating the content, of creating the videos, doing the post editing, and so I put together an actual proposal for our actual client. I knew that there were contractors that I'd be working with. I didn't list out that I was working with company A, B, C, and D, but I listed out the scope of services. I went and I got their pricing. We negotiated, went back and forth, and I gave one final cost to our to the client, and it was a Brandcamp University project, even though I had other people working for me, and they knew that I had, that I had videographers and I had, photographers working with me, but I didn't list those out as 3 separate companies. I listed it out as Brandcamp University, and so for me that has worked. There are times where I'm doing a project and I didn't realize that I needed to do X, and so then at the end of the day my name is connected to the work that I do, and so for me ultimately I need to make sure that the quality of work matches who I am as a person, because if it doesn't, then I've heard a millionaire tell me this, it's easier to make $1 and to figure out how to replicate that 1,000,000 times versus making $1 million one time. And so what happens is that when you do good work, that becomes the calling card for the next opportunity. I get a lot of opportunities based on word of mouth or people posting that they had a good experience. And so I think making sure that you maintain the integrity of your business and that people know that you provide quality services is important. And so I would do that. There are times where I've broken even or lost money on a project because my name was more important, and then I've ultimately won other business because I did it the right way. And so it's not the client's fault if you mispriced it. Now the other thing is that clients will try this. You'll come in and you'll offer X amount, and then they'll want other things that are not within the scope. And so that's when you have to make sure that you manage that, because once we get into it, sometimes we're like, oh, I'll do this, or I'll do that, and sometimes it's a tactic by the client to not say something, but to also just kind of slide it in to see if you'll do it. And there are times where there might be certain things that I might do because I think it's the right thing to do. Other times I'll say, well, it's not a part of our original scope. Let's take a look at it, and then if it's important, then maybe we need to trade off with some of the other things that we were going to provide. But again, it's up to you to manage that. If you don't have a vision for what you're doing, someone else will give you theirs. And people will take advantage of you if you allow them to do that. But you also need to make sure that you can do it in a way to where you don't destroy the relationship and burn the bridge all the way to the ground to where you couldn't cross back over the bridge to be able to do business with them in the future.
Well, many of you have also asked if this presentation will be available. Yes, you will be able to see the presentation and get an audio. It will be sent out via a link to you guys in about a week. We have to edit and make sure it's all clean and it sounds good and flows nicely. It'll be posted on YouTube. Clearly, Haj will post it on his website. The Urban League will have it on theirs, as well as the Urban League Jobs Network. And it will flow through all of my social media. So the answer to that is yes. And Haj, if you can kind of go over what's in the handout we're giving them, if all of you guys look to the right to the panel below the polls, there's a handout section, and you guys can download that handout. Haj has about 10 or so questions that you should think about when you're entering and or in or even exiting the gig economy that I think will keep you on track. If there's a couple of highlights, Haj, that you might want to bring up on that, and then I, let you move to the next thing. So.
Okay, all right. So I ask people whether this is a full-time or part-time idea. So you need to think about whether this is going to be something that this is going to be how you eat. Think about what digital tools that you'll use to manage your work. That becomes critically important because now you don't work for a huge organization where all the structure and things are in place. You have to be able to manage, report out, be able to manage your time and things like that, and that becomes important. And the last point that I'll hit is having a work environment that is optimized for productivity. So you have to figure out how you get work done. Do you need to operate in silence? Do you need to work in the in the office with your client X number of days? Do you need to have a physical office outside of your home office to be able to get stuff done? Do you need to have the ability to be able to do video calls, which can happen with a laptop, a phone? So a lot of tools that you need are available, but really understanding the best way for you to be the most productive, to be able to get work done. How do you respond to clients, right? So if they contact you, and you're not in the office that day, or you're not required to work with them, and they need a response, how fast you get back to them. So again, we start to really just get you to think about some things that relate back to being in the space and really understanding if you want to do this full time. The next thing is I just wanted to share just a few things about what I'm doing. So I run BrandCamp University. We're based in Detroit, Michigan. We are an educational platform to help people to tell better stories. We do a lot of training. We have a BrandCamp Summit coming up September the 12th, where we bring in thought leaders from around the world to be able to help people to be able to take their ideas to the next level. I've also been working on a project called Rebrand Detroit, which is about bringing branding and digital technology into neighborhoods. 46% of businesses have no website. 55% of businesses are cash only. Some are by design, and I'm sure we know some of those businesses. But what we've noticed is that there's a disconnect from a digital standpoint, and we're helping businesses to be able to get online. And so we're going to different cities. We just did a hackathon in Detroit. We have some more coming up in other cities where we'll be connecting with businesses, telling their story, but also helping them to get online and ultimately helping to drive economics. So if you go to HajFlemings.com, you can follow me on Twitter, and my handle is right there. You can also go to rebranddetroit.co and read more about our project as well too. And so I would love to connect with you. Hopefully this is not the last time that we have a chance to connect. I look forward to seeing you guys at the national conference, online or in other projects. And again, maybe bring me in to speak too. We can also do that. So again.
And he's not 30,000, he's 35. No, but Haj, I really want to thank you. I hope you guys have downloaded the handout. In about a week or so, like I said, you will receive a link to this one and the one we just did prior. And I want to promote the next one coming up is March 1st. And it's really talking about going from employee to CEO, so taking what Haj has told you today and hearing some stories on how it has been successful and some success and failures and trials and tribulations. And we'll have the head of membership from the freelancers union, Caitlin, and also Asanta Howard, who is one of the administrators for the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program, but she also has her own business where she coaches. Some of you guys asked today, how do you get coached on pricing and how to grow and what market you need to go after. That is her expertise. So the two of them will show you how to go from employee today to CEO on your own, or maybe how to balance both in a good way, and also give you some additional resources to what Haj has told you and possibly some of the ones you might have missed that he told you today. So follow up with us both on social media and also please continue to follow the Urban League and the Urban League Job Network. If you haven't uploaded your resume to their site, all of the companies and organizations that look for hiring those folks of color, women, and EEOE, this is the job site and the job resume pool that they look for. So join us there, and join us once again in St. Louis. And if any of you guys are in Detroit, please follow Haj. And if you have a small business there, he's helping small businesses develop their story, their websites, and everything else. So a great resource to have, and thank you all for coming. And until next time, have a great rest of your week.
Thank you. Thank you, Jody. Thank you, National Urban League. Thank you, Urban League Jobs Network. Thank you very much.
Thank you.